Float switches in your HVAC system are very cheap insurance. And frankly, they're not that difficult to put in either. In this video, I'll be showing you exactly how to install one, how to wire one up, what tools you will need to install a float switch yourself. If you're not familiar with the channel, at HVAC Double Agent, we elevate HVAC IQ for both homeowners and technicians. We're on a mission to save homeowners $1 million over the next year. Now let's save you some money and install this float switch. First, the tools and materials to install a float switch in your HVAC system. PVC cutters, PVC glue, you'll need some wire strippers, a couple wire nuts, and a float switch. After you have gathered up the tools, the next step is to identify the primary and secondary drains. The secondary drain is also referred to as the emergency drain line. As you can see, there are two drain lines, one that goes right into the pan and one that runs elsewhere. In this video, we will be explaining how to install a float switch in the primary drain line of your HVAC system. Also, if you're an old man like me, you might consider a knee pad to kneel on. If you need help identifying which of the two drain lines is the primary or secondary, feel free to reach out to us. The first bit of HVAC advice we give is always free. After that, if you join our membership, who knows, you might never have to pay for an HVAC repair again. It is super important that you realize before you cut the primary drain, you need to make certain that there is no water in it. If there is water in it, you definitely don't want to proceed to the next few steps. So that's what we just checked here. It's winter time here. This line is dry. It's a great time of year to do this. If your line is backed up and you cut it, you're definitely going to have a huge mess like the one we described at the beginning of this video. So make certain there's no water in this line as you cut it, or it'll be gushing out right about now. Go ahead and open up the float switch. This particular one has a bell reducer, which can be used for a 1-inch or 3/4 inch line. Most PVC lines out there are 3/4 inch, so you'll need to glue this piece in as we're about to do. It is also important to notate that some float switches out there are directional. This one is directional. You can also, it's multiple orientation. You can put it in different spots. You could put it here. You can also screw it in to where the secondary is. But for the sake of this video, we're only going to be focusing on the primary drain installation. After you have glued in the reducer like so now we're going to go ahead and glue in our float switch. It's very important when using PVC glue that once you stick the pipe into the fitting that you rotate it at least 90 degrees. If you notice, I started 90 degrees from where I wanted the pipe to end and rotated it. What this does is it provides a weld, creating a nice watertight seal. Now when you get to the very last connection like this one, obviously you're not going to be able to twist it, so just make sure it's all the way in the pipe. Very important that when applying the glue, you always put it on both pieces, the male and the female, like so. On this very last connection, the goal is make sure the pipe pushes all the way into the fitting, like so. The next step is how to wire up the float switch for your HVAC system. It is important that I mention when selecting the location in the primary drain line, you might want to make sure that the wires reach over to the electrical section. This one actually cut it pretty close. If you're following along while you're installing this, make sure your wires reach to the electrical section of your furnace or air handler. Most furnaces these days will have a panel to take off before you can get into the electrical panel. Please note, if you don't have any experience with electrical, I would definitely recommend not proceeding to this step. Before proceeding, watch this video on electrical safety. Also, make sure that you have a non-contact voltage detector like the one shown in the video. Most furnaces will have a light switch that turns off power. Make sure you find the breaker as well. and turn off the breaker in addition to the light switch. After you have checked to make sure power is off with your non-contact voltage detector, it's time to remove the electrical panel from your furnace. Most furnaces will have a 1/4 inch or 5/16 hex head screw holding them in place. Once you get into the electrical section, there is a variety of ways to wire up float switches. In this particular model here, the system already had a float switch in its emergency drain pan. That's where these 2 red wires come from that I'm holding. The best and easiest way to do this is look at the circuit board and find the letter R. Remove the wire that's connected to R and wire nut 1 wire from your float switch to the wire that was connected to the R terminal. After you have disconnected our wire at the circuit board, make sure you push your float switch wires through the furnace cabinet. You don't want to have to rewire it. Let me repeat this step. You're going to wire nut one side of your float switch to the wire that was connected to the R terminal. Next, you're going to take the other wire from your float switch and you're going to connect it to the R terminal on the circuit board. I always like to pull on the connections a little bit to make sure they're tight. Slap that electrical panel back on there. Let's make our way over to our electrical breaker that we turned off to. Turn that on. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and make our way over to the switch to apply power to our furnace. Now let's check this puppy. You can pull it out, push up the switch.
Watch this next video, you'll like it too.
Bam, power's off. Thanks for watching, subscribe.